This is Mark Chu. He's a documentary photographer based in Melbourne. He's travelled the world working for NGOs, and in doing so has photographed people whose stories often go untold. Most recently, he travelled through East Africa with the Edmund Rice Foundation.
I think it's fairly clear-cut for me what the difference is. I mean, I think a documentary photographer has a responsibility to try and portray as accurately as possible what actually happened, what it was like to be there. So this is a little sort of photographic story about a boy called Vincent and his mother. In Kenya, often the mothers like to be referred to as Mama and then the name of their firstborn, so she's Mama Vincent. She lives in Kibera in a shack that's 3 metres by 3 metres with her 5 children and her husband. Vincent here is about 11 years old, I think, and he has fairly severe autism.
Tell me a little bit about Kibera.
Okay, so this is not a great photograph, but it's an important photograph because it's sort of one of the few photos I've got which sort of shows an expanse of what Kibera is. It's an urban slum that houses somewhere between 250,000 and 1 million people. Nobody really knows how many. There's all sorts of different reports. It's situated in this valley that runs down towards the centre of Nairobi, and a lot of it's on quite steep slopes. There's no roads or access. Well, actually, there is a road going through the middle now, but access is by small muddy paths on these steep slopes to your hut. Most huts are about 3 by 3 metres square, and they house on average 8 people, so you should pace out 3 by 3 metres and then imagine putting 8 people in that space. That's the average density of population in Kibera. As I say, it's been there for about 100 years, so there's up to 5th generation of Kiberans living there in some cases. It's not something you can just sort of bulldoze and start again. It's a community that is complicated and intricate, and much like any community in the world, relies on the connections between people rather than the physical structures. It's pretty well established that for every $1 that you can get to places like this, the effectiveness of it will be felt far more if it's got into a woman's hands rather than a man's hands. Women tend to care about the education of their children, care about the nutrition of their children, care about the health of their children and their communities, when men might do so, but often will probably care about themselves a little bit more. So if you're talking about making change on any sort of scale, you should try to get your aid into the hands of women. I'm always amazed how amongst all this sort of squalor and debris of Kibera, how people struggle to keep their particular areas clean, and it's just like their clothes are always really clean, or a lot of people's clothes are clean, and the little area that they live in is constantly swept and looked after. I think details like that tell us a lot about people, and I enjoy having them in a photograph like this. Once Mama Vincent and Vincent are ready to go to school, she grabs the baby and the 3 of them walk through the slum, through the little narrow winding muddy parts of the slum, up the hill to the edge of the new bypass road, which sort of runs along the side of Kibera. It's a very busy road, and they go along there for 2 or 3 kilometres and cross the road, which is a sort of tricky situation because it's so busy and there's no crossings, and eventually walking past a big block of sort of new residential flats, they come to the Mary Rice Centre. So after the walk along the edge of Kibera, Vincent and his mother arrive at school. Vincent's mother works 3 days a week, I think it is, in the kitchen at the Mary Rice Centre. The children are bunched into classes sort of determined by their age group rather than their disability, which is understandable, but also makes it very hard for the teachers. So you might get kids with Vincent's case, autism, and then you might get kids with cerebral palsy, kids with acquired brain injuries, kids with Down syndrome. And they're put in the same classroom, and the teachers are fantastic. They do a great job. They're full of energy and they engage the kids all on these different levels, trying to keep them challenged and stimulated during the day. This is a portrait of Vincent. You know, if you saw that, you'd probably think, you know, what a great kid. Bit of fun, little buck teeth, lovely smile on his face. And he's a great kid. But he's also got some massive challenges. And here's a couple of versions of a portrait of Mama Vincent. I look at this and she's looking down, and this is very much a sort of a look she wears a lot. And there's a definite sadness in her eyes, there really is. I'm not pretending that, and I'm not making it up. But I think I'd probably like to use this picture instead. There's a little bit more hope. The sadness isn't gone, but with her eyes up and the shape of her beautiful hat on her head here, and she's looking out this way, I think there's a bit more hope and a bit more optimism that her life can be a little bit richer looking after her beautiful son Vincent than maybe some of us would expect.